In the shadows where truth and tales intertwine, we find the thrilling, the chilling, the downright spine-tingling. From the paranormal to the peculiar, every echo has a story. Dare to delve into the unexpected, the unexplained? Brace yourself, for you're about to embark on a journey where fear meets fascination. Stay tuned if you dare, for stories that will make your heart race and your mind ponder. Welcome to the realm of the eerie, the realm of the unknown. And remember, like and subscribe, if you dare. On a biting winter night in the year 1967, the park's silence was shattered by the clamor of some hunters. Our tale begins on a frosty evening as I, a retired park ranger named John, trudged through the park, establishing winter boundaries. Fatigue was my unwelcome companion, an inevitable outcome of winter's limited staffing. Yet, the quiet serenity of the park, bathed in a cloak of white, made it all worthwhile. An unexpected crackle of the radio interrupted my musings, a complaint about noisy hunters lodged in a log cabin. Hunters, a rowdy bunch, but this was unusual even for them. So I began my journey towards the site, each step a battle against the snow's resistance, the cold air nipping at my skin. As I neared, the faint uproar of the hunters wafted through the winter air. I braced myself, anticipating a group of intoxicated men firing rifles into the wilderness in their merry revelry. But the scene that awaited me was far from my expectations. The hunters were not in high spirits, but rather seemed disoriented, their eyes scanning the area in disquiet. After a brief exchange, it was clear they were neither drunk nor jubilant. Their sobriety was not the product of restraint, but of genuine concern. Their worry centered around one of their friends, Frank, who was missing. Frank, it seemed, had ventured out into the forest for a moment of solitude, only to be drawn further in by an unknown allure. His friends, initially unconcerned given Frank's familiarity with the forest and his hunting prowess, grew anxious as time passed. They reported hearing strange noises and sensing movement in the forest earlier, but had dismissed it as a bear or a deer. But Frank's disappearance had now cast a shadow of doubt over their assumptions. Their concern was directed towards one of their friends, Frank, who had run into the forest chasing after an unknown entity. A cold winter night had suddenly turned into a chilling mystery, the first chapter of an eerie tale that was yet to unfold. With the hunter's account of Frank's sudden disappearance, the seriousness of the situation dawned upon us. The idea of Frank, an experienced hunter, lost in the chilling winter night, was a disquieting thought. We were a resolute group, determined to find our friend. Our journey into the heart of the forest was a silent one, punctuated only by the crunch of our boots on the fresh snow. We followed Frank's tracks, a trail of solitary footprints that led us deeper into the woods. The absence of any other animal tracks struck us as peculiar. It was as if the forest had swallowed up all its inhabitants, leaving behind an eerie silence. The trail led us to a clearing, a scene that sent chills down our spines. There were signs of a struggle. Blood speckled the snow, and the ground beneath had been disturbed, revealing the dark earth. The sight was enough to freeze the blood in our veins. We searched for signs of what animal could have caused this, but found no tracks, no prints, nothing but the haunting stillness of the forest. Uncertainty hung heavy in the cold air as we decided to split up, hoping to cover more ground. I paired up with one of the hunters, and we set off straight ahead, leaving the others to explore the left and right flanks of the clearing. As we ventured further into the heart of the forest, an unsettling feeling washed over us. It felt as though eyes were watching us from the shadows. The silence was deafening, swallowing even the sound of our own breaths. The crunching snow under our feet seemed to disappear into the void of the night. Suddenly, a shadowy figure darted across our path in the distance. We approached the area, but it was long gone. All that remained were peculiar holes in the ground, deep and thick, as if a bear had been digging but on its hind legs. The hunter accompanying me pointed towards the darkness. That's when we saw it, a pair of glowing eyes staring back at us from the inky blackness. We raised our rifles, but as quickly as they appeared, they vanished. As we ventured deeper into the forest, an eerie feeling of being watched settled upon us. The forest silence was unsettling, and the sight of a shadowy figure crawling in the distance did nothing to ease our nerves. The figure was elusive, disappearing as we approached, leaving us in the heart of the woods, with only our torchlight to guide us. The once comforting familiarity of the forest had turned into a maze of shadows and strange noises. In the spot where we had seen the figure, we found a series of peculiar holes in the ground. They were not like the usual markings of wildlife we were accustomed to seeing. These were deep, as if they had been dug by a creature with significant strength. The holes were about 2.5 pens in length, a detail that added to the growing sense of unease. They were oddly thick too, as if made by a bear standing on its claws. I couldn't shake off the feeling that whatever had created these holes was not an animal we were familiar with. As we examined the area, a chill ran down my spine. The forest, which had been eerily quiet, seemed to hum with an unseen presence. The hairs at the back of my neck stood on end, a primal instinct alerting me to a potential threat. The hunter accompanying me seemed to sense it too. His eyes darted around the gloomy forest, his grip tightening on his rifle. Suddenly he tapped my shoulder and pointed toward the darkness. My heart pounded in my chest as I followed his gaze. There, in the pitch black of the forest, a pair of bright eyes stared back at us. They were unlike any animal eyes I had seen before, glowing menacingly in the dark. We raised our rifles instinctively, but just as quickly as they had appeared, they vanished. Just as we were trying to comprehend the situation, the hunter pointed towards the darkness, where a pair of bright eyes stared back at us. Before we could even raise our rifles, the bright eyes had disappeared, replaced by a familiar figure rushing out of the forest. It was Frank, his face flushed and eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. His clothes were torn and dirty, but he seemed unharmed, physically at least. "Where did it go?" he demanded, panting heavily from the exertion. Frank was a seasoned hunter, yet the urgency in his voice was unmistakable. He was not talking about a bear or a deer, but something he had never encountered before. We tried to calm him down, urging him to take a moment and breathe. But Frank was restless. His eyes darted around the forest, his fingers twitching near the trigger of his rifle. He was determined to find the creature, whatever it was. We didn't know what he had seen, but we knew it was something beyond our comprehension, something that had left Frank, an experienced hunter, rattled and eager to chase. But the dark forest was not a place to satisfy curiosity, especially not on this cold, eerie night. We told Frank we should head back, that it was dangerous to be out in the woods at this time. He was reluctant, his gaze still fixed on the shadowy trees. But eventually, he gave in. Maybe it was the cold seeping into his bones, or perhaps the realization that he was not prepared for whatever lived in the depths of the forest. As we made our way back to the cabin, the forest seemed even more silent than before. Each crunching step in the snow echoed around us, and we couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. But we pressed on, a group of hunters turned prey in the chilling darkness. Finally, the cabin's lights were in sight, a beacon of safety in the enigmatic wilderness. We didn't linger in the forest, didn't dare to look back at the unknown entity that lurked in its depths. We left the forest that night with more questions than answers, wondering about the unknown entity that lurked in its depths. As we retreated to the safety of our cabins, Frank's story unfolded, raising more questions about the unknown creature. Frank recounted how he had glimpsed a large, shadowy figure moving in the forest. He had pursued it, thinking it was a bear or deer. However, upon closer inspection, the creature was unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was the strange creature that he had chased into the heart of the forest. The creature was elusive, leaving behind only the faintest trace of its presence. The peculiar holes in the ground, the depth of which was about 2.5 pens, were unlike any animal markings we'd seen before. They were thick, as if made by a creature of considerable weight. Yet there were no tracks leading to or from them. Frank described a sudden, eerie silence that had fallen over the forest, the same silence I had experienced. The feeling of being watched was a sensation we both couldn't shake off. We were being observed by something or someone lurking in the shadows. And then there were the eyes, bright glowing orbs that pierced the darkness, disappearing as quickly as they had appeared. Their glow was not that of a predator's eyes, but something altogether different, something that sent a shiver down our spines and made our blood run cold. We combed the area for any other signs of that creature, but found nothing. The forest had swallowed up the evidence, leaving behind only the chilling memory of our encounter. We were left with an unresolved mystery, a question that echoed in our minds. What was this creature that had stalked us in the forest? Frank was unharmed, but his experience had changed him. He was quieter, more reserved. He rarely ventured into the woods after that night. The forest, once a place of beauty and tranquility, had become a source of fear and uncertainty. The mystery of what Frank chased that winter night remains unresolved, a chilling reminder of the unknown entities that could be lurking in the depths of the forest. And so, our tale of the Campfire Horrors comes to an end. Until next time, sleep tight. Before we part ways, dear viewers, remember to stay vigilant. The Campfire Horrors may have been extinguished for now, but the embers of the unknown always remain. As you lay down to sleep tonight, don't forget the lessons from our tale. Safety is but a fleeting moment in a world of unseen. So, if you've enjoyed this journey into the abyss, don't forget to ring that bell and smash that like button. Do it before the thing under your bed decides to pay you a visit. Oh, and keep those night lights on. You never know what might be lurking in the dark. Thank you for embarking on this terrifying adventure with us. Until our paths cross again in another tale of the unknown. Goodbye and sweet dreams, if you can.